Initiating System 1. System 1 loaded.
And now for our feature presentation.
What is going on, guys? Solo J King here, and we are doing a video on Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. So, of course, this is going to contain spoilers. If you haven't seen Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 yet, it came out this past weekend. It's still out in theaters. It's not going away, and it is the #1 movie right now. And honestly, if you haven't seen any bad reviews for it, that's because there is none. This movie is a fantastic conclusion to the Guardians trilogy and one of the best MCU movies we had recently, and if you ask me, in my humble opinion, my #1 Marvel movie right now. And that's saying something, especially given the facts that we have the likes of No Way Home, Shang-Chi, Wakanda Forever, but this one just really hit different for me. But this isn't what we're talking about in this. What we're actually talking about is a theory, more say. So again, spoiler, but yeah, at the end of Guardians Volume 3, none of the Guardians died. The trailers made us really think that Rocket was going to die, and then the movie made us think for a second that Peter was going to die, but no. Every single one of the Guardians members, from the beginning of the movie all the way to the end, survived. Not one of them died, not one of them perished, not one of them was taken out. The only person that was maybe technically killed was the villain of the film, the High Evolutionary. But now that the Guardians have defeated him, as we know at the end of the film, they all decided to split up. Rocket and Groot are going to be leading the new Guardians, while most of the others are going off to do their own separate things. But now that leads us to the question.
Where could we see the Guardians next in the MCU?
Because while this may be the end of them, and especially the end of James Gunn's run on them, there is the door that is left open for many of these characters to appear again in future MCU products, especially a very certain Kang Dynasty and Secret Wars that could come up. But I wanted to talk about where we could potentially see these characters' lives going based on stuff from the comic books going into the future for these characters. Because while the end may have given us a guarantee that especially one of these characters will be seen again relatively soon maybe, we definitely need to talk about where all of them could end up. So let's talk about it. But just so you know, we're going to be starting from the group of the Guardians that we left to like individuals. But we're only also going to exclude Gamora and Drax because Dave Bautista and Zoe Saldana have basically said, yeah, we're done. Like, you know, we don't want to play the characters anymore. I think we're pretty done. And unless they say anything otherwise, I don't think we'll be seeing Gamora and Drax for like a very, very, very long time unless they ever get recasted, which maybe might be the case after Secret Wars, but we'll see. So let's start off, I guess, with the Guardians group that we left behind. So at the mid-credit scene, we saw that Rocket is with a brand new group of Guardians. Groot is still there, Kraglin is still there, and so as well as Cosmo, who is now a full-fledged member of the group, along with Adam Warlock and the little girl that we met in the film, who was revealed to be the MCU's version of Phila, which we will get to in a little bit. I want to talk about these characters as a group, where we might see them again, and individually. Now, as a group of the Guardians, we now see that the Guardians of the Galaxy will forever be out there. The group might expand. We might even get other characters like Richard Rider's Nova, or Silver Surfer, or Beta Ray Bill, or even Phyla-Vell's, partner Moondragon. They might all show up at some point in the future. While definitely right now, I'm pretty sure Marvel is going to hold off on making any more Guardians content, I definitely think that later on down the line, probably post Phase 6, we'll definitely see the Guardians of the Galaxy rise up again, maybe as a brand new group of characters. Hell, it might be funny for them to kind of do what the opposite of what the comics did, and instead have the original version of the Guardians of the Galaxy, who are out there, be the new Guardians of the Galaxy. Because for many of you who don't know, the group that we know most famously, Peter, Gamora, Drax, Rocket, Groot, were not the original Guardians. There was a comic book about the Guardians of the Galaxy a long, long time ago. It just wasn't as popular as the ones we know now that only became popular after the Annihilation event, where they all became the Guardians of the Galaxy for the first time. So, talking about this group specifically, I think we'll definitely see this group, or at least a different group of Guardians down the line. But talk about each character individually. I think for Rocket and Groot, they're definitely going to stay where they are. While the two characters are two out of the four Guardians members from the Volume 3 film that are known to go off on their own, especially since they've known to have their own comic book series on their own, that being Rocket and Groot having their own series for themselves within the comic books. I definitely think right now, given the state of where the characters are, I think they're definitely staying with the group. I don't think they're going to have any solo adventures that would lead to, like, say, a Disney Plus special or a separate movie that we would see them away from the Guardians doing their own thing the next time we could see these characters. So I think for them, yeah, I think it's pretty much set in stone that they're going to stay there as well. Probably same thing for Kraglin, and also same thing for Cosmo. Now, it's a difference for Phila and for Adam Warlock because they are two major characters. Let's start with Adam Warlock because Adam Warlock's actor, Will Porter, did say that he was interested in showing up in future MCU films like Avengers films. And for many who don't know, Adam Warlock was a major player in the original Infinity Gauntlet storyline in the comics. That's why we all thought that he potentially could have showed up for Infinity War Endgame, but of course, especially after the tease in Guardians Volume 2, but that didn't end up happening, and instead he made his MCU debut in here, but it isn't too late for him to join the Avengers later on down the line. You know, I definitely think that the Avengers could use a powerhouse like him, especially when going up against the likes of Kang, or any other villains that might show up later on down the line. Now, as for Phila, that might be a different story as well, because again, for many of you who don't know, let me catch you up to speed. Phila in the comics is the genetically altered daughter of Mar-Vell. Not Captain Marvel Carol Danvers, but the original Captain Marvel, Mar-Vell, who we kind of got in the first Captain Marvel film back in 2019, but they kind of gender bent the character a bit, if I remember correctly. But yeah, Phila is the daughter of Mar-Vell, and because of that, she has similar powers to him, which means similar powers to, you know, Carol Danvers, as you probably noticed when they went into battle at the end of that mid-credit scene. Also, she is known as the superhero known as Quasar. There have been a few people who have called Quasar, but she is one of the most prominent characters that have been called Quasar. I definitely think with the introduction of her, especially given the fact that the next film, which won't be until November, is The Marvels, I think there might be a chance that Phila could show up in The Marvels at some point. Maybe, you know, show up halfway through or something like that. I have no idea. But given the coincidence, I think it's just too good to be. I think it's just like too good to like overlook. So I definitely feel like Phila could show up again later on down the line, especially given how much importance she has to the Marvel Universe. Now, let's talk about the characters that left the Guardians, because again, many of them went off to do their own thing. Again, we're excluding Drax and we're excluding Gamora because, you know, the actors are done unless they want to do anything with them otherwise. But of course, as we know, Gamora is back with the Ravengers, and Drax is staying on Nowhere to basically be a dad to all the refugee, you know, kids on there, which also includes Phila, which is funny enough given the fact that Phila's partner is his daughter Moondragon. And while his daughter may still be dead in the MCU, who knows, maybe she could come back at some point in the future, but that's to be seen. But let's talk about the other Guardians that are, you know, most likely still willing to come back for a future installment. Starting with Nebula. Now, Nebula, as we know at the end of the film, decided that she was not going to be the captain of the Guardians, but instead going to be the head of Nowhere, because again, they turned the entire Celestial head into their new headquarters as of Guardians of the Galaxy Holiday Special, and so now she's going to be manning the entire colony, turning into a place where she and her sister never had. Now, where can Nebula show up again? I have no idea. I think, if anything, what I'll say for most of these characters is probably Kang Dynasty if we'd ever seen them again, or Secret Wars at the very most. But, you know, in terms of Nebula, it's hard to tell, especially thinking about future MCU projects. Now, if there was ever a chance that Thanos could come back within the MCU, especially given the fact that in the comics with the Infinity Gauntlet event, he didn't die after that, because as we know, he came back multiple times in the comics. He got revived, he got brought back to life, he's been through multiple situations. You can knock this guy down and he would want to stay with Mistress Death, but he keeps coming back. So if there's ever a chance that Thanos, or maybe an alternate reality version of Thanos, since we are dealing with the multiverse now in the MCU, could show up, I think definitely Nebula might have to get involved in it, especially since Gamora, again, until they recast her most likely, Nebula would be the one to try and take, on, an alternate reality Thanos. But outside of that, I don't know. I would very much like to see Nebula again in the future. Again, maybe in a future Guardians film that could happen. Again, they left that out in the open that Guardians films could still happen, even if James Gunn is no longer at the helm. But we shall see. Now, going over to Mantis. Mantis, that is a very special case because, again, at the end of the film, she said that she wanted to go and discover what she wanted for herself. She's always done what Ego wanted and what the Guardians wanted, but now she wants to discover who she is and what she wants to do for herself. Now, where can Nebula show up again? I know many of you are probably saying Kang Dynasty, and yeah, that is definitely a good spot, but we also have to talk about the character of Mantis as a whole. Mantis in the comics is known as the Celestial Madonna. Basically, she's a very, very, very important character in the Marvel Universe, especially thanks to her writer who was a big, who was head over heels for the character and just wanted to throw her in everything. But either way, she had a lot of importance to the Marvel Universe, not only as the Celestial Madonna, but also as a Guardian and an Avengers member. So, if anything, I definitely think we could see Mantis show up, yes, in the Kang Dynasty, but maybe in a separate project. Especially because, again, in the comics, she's also an Avenger. And she's also in a relationship with Swordsman, who we got introduced to in Hawkeye. So there is definitely a chance for the two of them to meet up at some point before the events of Kang Dynasty and, see her maybe join the Avengers. Maybe she'll be part of that new Avengers lineup that we, have yet to see. Because, again, as current at the time, the Avengers are no more. But maybe she could become a part of that Futures lineup. So I guess we just have to see where they go with Mantis, but I definitely think she could show up again, and I think Palm would definitely be up to showing up again, even if she is working with James Gunn over in DC, but we'll see how that all goes. Now, in terms of the last character we need to talk about, that of course being Star-Lord. Where could we see Peter again? Because the final scenes of the film show Peter going back to Earth, reuniting with his grandfather, Jason Quill, and the end credit scene seeing him, staying with his grandfather for now, since, again, he's been gone for, so many freaking years, ever since he left Earth when he was 8 years old. So, and the literal titling said, the legendary Star-Lord will return. So, where could we see Peter again? Well, it's very convenient that Peter is on Earth right now, given the fact that Secret Wars is coming up. For many of you who didn't read the 2015 Secret Wars event, which is what most likely the movie's going to be based off of, Peter Quill is one of the major players in it, because when the multiverse is all destroyed after the incursions, there are a few heroes that survive thanks to life rafts, those being the likes of Peter Parker Spider-Man, Miles Morales Spider-Man, Captain Marvel, Jane Foster's Thor, Black Panther, Mr. Fantastic, Cyclops, and Star-Lord. Yes, Peter is part of that surviving, survivors raft, group that make it onto Battle World and face off against God Emperor Doom to, fix the multiverse afterwards. So it's very convenient that he's on Earth in time for the events of Kang Dynasty and Secret Wars. But outside of that, if we were to get any type of solo film with just Peter, what would even be, the film? Well, it's called The Legendary Star-Lord, and there are multiple routes you could go with it. The Legendary Star-Lord comic book run was about Peter learning that there were other kids of his father, who in the comics wasn't Ego, but actually Jason of Spartax. And he even met one of his, estranged siblings during that. Now, while in the MCU, the only sibling he has is Mantis, and his father is Ego. Remember, Ego did have a lot of other kids, and while a lot of them did die, there is maybe a chance that, just like Peter and just like Mantis, there are others out there that maybe didn't have the celestial gene that Ego needed, but did develop some powers that either might be on Earth or on other universes that Peter could end up teaming up, finding. Maybe that's even where we see Mantis again. Maybe she shows up to help him in that whole endeavor. I think that's definitely a case that could also happen. Another thing that could potentially happen while he's on Earth is that he meets another love interest, because while Gamora is definitely his love interest and his soulmate in the comics, there was another character that he did have a very serious relationship with, and you'd be very surprised to hear who exactly. Kitty Pryde of the X-Men. Yes, I'm not joking. He literally had a relationship with Kitty Pryde of the X-Men. It lasted for quite a long time, actually, and they didn't break up until post Civil War II. But yeah, before then, the two of them were together. He even proposed to her. She was willing to move to space and lead the X-Men for him. That's how much the two cared about one another. And while we haven't gotten the X-Men yet, we are starting to get the seed plants with Kamala Khan being a mutant and Namor showing up in Wakanda Forever. And who knows who else might show up and become a mutant, or what X-Men characters might show up out of the woodworks. I guess it's all just, a wait and see game with them. So I guess it's a good thing that Peter got to Earth just in time, before everything went to shit.
However long it does take for us to get Avengers King Dynasty and Secret Wars.
Which all depends on when they can film it, which depends on the writer's strike that's currently going on, and also depends on the Jonathan Majors situation. But that's a discussion for another time. But yeah, that's my theory, basically, about where the other Guardians could show up, what other adventures they may have, as separate people and as a collective group. Guys, I think we can all agree Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 was just fantastic, and again, I love the film. I can't wait to rewatch it as many times as I can. I can't wait to see it either on Disney Plus or own it physically as a DVD copy. I don't care which one comes first. Whatever comes out first, I'm getting it, because I just love this film so much. No MCU film has made me cry as much as this before. And that's saying something, given Wakanda Forever, No Way Home, and Endgame happened. So, yeah. This was a fantastic film, and I'm going to miss these guys, but I have a feeling that it won't be super long before we see at least some of them. So, I say let's hold out hope. But yeah, guys, that is it for now. I wanted to do the solo theory video just, for you guys to kind of get an idea of where my head's going post Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. And also, maybe even put some ideas into your own mind about where you think these characters could show up next. And maybe what other, Guardians of the Galaxy members that have yet to be shown on the big screen do you want to show up, and where would you want them to show up with? Which Guardian member would you want them to team up with? Let us know. But alright, guys. Peace.